What's up, everyone? My name is Brian Deitch. I'm a solutions architect with Zscaler, and today we're going to talk about making transparent security work for your organization while making your end users happy. So let's jump right into it. We have very limited time. So let's kind of start off where you guys are kind of at today. Maybe you're a multinational organization and you have a data center over here, in the U.S. Then you have a data center maybe in EMEA. And then you also have another data center, excuse my handwriting, over here in APAC, right? And to further complicate things, now you also have, headquarter offices. Maybe you're multinational, have multiple HQs. Then you have a ton of branch offices as well. So you're kind of getting the layout of what you actually have throughout here. So enter in March Madness, right? Or I like to call it COVID times, right? Now we got users that are used to be in the branch office and all that good stuff. Now they're working from home, and you have all these people that are no longer in the office, and they have to figure out a way to connect these users back to applications, right? So we can denote those things as, app 1, and I'll kind of paint the entire picture here as we go along. App 2. Actually, I want to make it app 1 across the board for fun's sake, so I can show you exactly how I could geolocate people and throw them to the closest application, right? So we'll just kind of denote this dude as your traditional road warrior, and then to add into, other stuff, right? We got the big bad internet over here, and it might be Facebook, it could be Instagram, just whatever you want, Snapchat, social media. And then you might also have, SaaS-based applications. You got your Office 365 and, Salesforce.com. And the last but not least, have your private cloud. And this could be, again, AWS, or Azure, you name it, right? It's up there, all this kind of good stuff. So when you start to look at kind of the layout, right? You look at this and say, okay, well, I have users off the network, and I need to figure out a way to get them to all of this stuff, right? So the first thing that you do is you say, okay, well, we're going to deploy a VPN into all of our different data centers, and this is how we're going to broker access into these environments, right? So we got VPNs all across the board, your traditional stuff, it's all good. You got your VPN right here for all the different geos. Maybe you're lucky, right? Maybe you're doing IP anycast or you're using GTM to dynamically steer these users to it. Maybe they actually have to drop in a little box and say, hey, I want to go over to this data center, right? So let's start talking a little bit about the pain associated with this kind of remote model, or heck, even branch office, a hub and spoke model altogether, right? So the first thing is you're going to have what I like to call an increased attack surface, right? And I know what you're thinking, hey, Brian, we're using a VPN. This is how we reduce our attack surface, right? We make sure the users coming in can talk to applications, blah, blah, blah. The problem with a VPN, right, is that there's an inbound type of access control there, right? There's a way to get in. You have to stand it up on 80 or 443, hopefully 443, to get these users to be able to talk to these applications wherever they're at. Same thing. It kind of boils down. You look at this and you say, okay, well, have your attack surface, and then kind of a child thing of this is when you're doing the whole VPN thing, in order for it to be successful, it has to always be on. And if you think about this, always on, which means a user is going to always be on the network. And even if they're going to go out to Facebook or they're going to go out to Office 365, you're going to backhaul them all over this place. So if you look into kind of the nature of that, if you have an always on VPN and you're doing this backhaul, right, you're introducing latency. And let me explain, right? Got latency, which means what happens if you have a user over here in California, and the closest data center to them is New York City. Now, for private applications, that's okay, right? You have to kind of go down that route to be able to get there. But what happens if the user is trying to get out to the SaaS-based applications or the open internet? You know, first and foremost, right, you have this very complicated security stack, right? You've got your SSL inspection and next generation firewall and URL filtering and sandboxing, all the way down to, you know, your DLP type of stuff. And you're going to kind of stuff them all back or hairpin them back to a data center and send them out there. Now, if this user is in California, right, and they're trying to go out to Office 365, one of the things they're going to notice is that when they have their always-on VPN, right, performance stinks. It's straight up just in the toilet. Why is that, right? Users going from California to New York and then all the way back over here, depending where the application is. You're traversing the entire United States to do this. The appropriate way is to say, well, if a user's in California, how about we just put them to the closest application, right? If Office 365 is available in the East Coast and the West Coast and the Midwest and whatever, how about you get them there, right? So that's part of your latency problem too. The other one is, like, what if you have kind of a mobile user and they forget that, you know, they were connected to a VPN that's in the US, but they decided to travel to Europe. All of a sudden now, if they don't remember to turn it on or off, or I'm sorry, off and back on, they're in Europe and they should be connecting to the EMEA one, but they're stuck over here in the US. Now they're traversing the entire, you know, Atlantic Ocean. That's going to be a very, very poor user experience. So when we look at that, right, now you have users that aren't going to always have it on. Now they're going to turn it off because they know when the VPN's on, performance sucks. They're only going to use the VPN when they absolutely need to. So when we look at that, now you're starting to introduce risk. And what do I mean by that? The user turns off their VPN. Now they're going directly out to the internet, right? There are no security controls that are going to tell them that, hey, when they go out to Facebook, they're not allowed to take sensitive company information and post it out there, right? Not all websites are created equally. They're going to go out there, maybe they pull down like a 0-day, right, and infect the machine, and now it's all kinds of problematic, right? This is all because they have the ability to turn off this VPN, introduces risk. So what happens if this road warrior, right, turns off VPN because he wants to watch Netflix and it was poor performance? And you know what? They should be able to do that, right? Why not enable your users to do more on the network as long as it doesn't compromise it in the name of security? They're out there doing their things. Maybe an email comes in on a personal email or something like that. They click the link, go to a phishing website, download some malware. Now there is this malware that's running on their PC. They fire open their VPN, right? They come in through that front door, they hit the VPN. Now they're kind of in this user VLAN of networks, right? And they have all these other users that are connected to the same data center, whichever one it is. Now this machine that has been infected has the ability to spread east to west, right? Now to start infecting other machines in the network or servers and kind of stuff like that. So the notion of, you know, these road warriors having VPN turned on and putting them on the network is terrible. And the last little bullet point I put on here is that, you know, users in general, they don't like Big Brother. They don't like to be monitored. They don't like that notion. So they typically hate stuff, right? If there's a control in place, they don't like it, and so the users hate it, right? And that's painful for you, because if users are going out of their way to circumvent the technologies that you guys have in place, then what good is it, right? So this is where I want to kind of look at it and say, well, you know, what is the Zscaler way? And this is where we're going to kind of enter in what I call the big bad Zscaler cloud. So we put this right here. In all roads, at the end of the day, they all point to Zscaler. And the biggest thing that I want you guys to take out of this meeting, if you have to drop here in the next 10 seconds, is number one, friends don't let friends deploy VPNs, right? This is gross, nasty. We don't do that anymore. That's what our grandfathers did back in the day. That's what dinosaurs do, right? They deploy VPNs. The other part to this is, before you drop, is that you no longer need the security stack. This security stack, all the functionality that you have today, that you have replicated in New York City, over here in EMEA and APAC, is going to be done, locked and loaded into the Zscaler cloud. So you don't have to sacrifice security for performance, right? You're going to get the exact same stuff out of it. So let's look at this, and we'll kind of work this down, top down from the pane. So if we look at the attack surface, what I'm saying is no more VPNs, right? What I am going to do is I'm going to start drawing some arrows right here. So I got this one going over here and another one for these internal applications, all outbound, and the same thing with the private cloud. Now these users, right, they have something called the Zscaler Client Connector. It's a lightweight agent. Its primary goal is to forward traffic to Zscaler and let the business policy engine there dictate what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, what they have access to and what they don't have access to. And the same thing goes when you talk about your internal applications, whether they're here or in the private cloud. The same thing kind of goes for the SaaS-based, right? We're going to broker that connectivity. We're going to send them to the closest point of presence to these applications and help do this. So when I start to reduce the attack surface, you're probably saying, okay, but wait a second, Brian. This user over here in California needs to access application 1, and you got these blue little arrows pointing at the cloud. What does that really mean? What that means is we have a lightweight VM that gets deployed. Its sole goal in life is to reach out to the Zscaler cloud and to say, hey, you know what? I can talk to application 1, and I roughly know where that's at, right? So when this user says, hey, I want to talk to application 1, it hits the cloud. And number 1, we say, who the heck are you, right? What groups are you a part of? Are you allowed to talk to application 1? If you are allowed to talk to application 1, in microseconds, we're going to say, all right, guys, and when I say guys, the VMs that are living across these data centers, who knows about application 1, and tell me which one is going to be closest to the user. It comes in, it hits our cloud, and we say, oh, we know exactly where that's at, right? That's application 1 over here in the New York data center. And via this outbound connection, I'm actually a micro-tunnel connection back over here. And I'm going to give it access right into application 1. So that's kind of how we reduce that attack surface. There's no inbound ACL. And I see it, you're probably looking at, yes, you have a question.
Yeah, so we had a question said, could this control what internet sites they are allowed to go to, like a whitelist?
Yes, absolutely. You can have an allow list, whitelist, whatever you guys want to call it. And the cooler part about this is you can literally say, hey, you know what? Maybe you just want to allow users to get to any social media website on a company-owned PC. But what you can do is they can say they can view Facebook, but they can't actually post any content, right? So you enable them to do more, but you're not going to put yourself at risk. Was that the only question?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the whole URL filtering, right? I want to say that Brian Deitch can get out to Facebook.com, but Brian Deitch can't go to gambling, right? Or some nefarious website like that. So that's the control. And the cooler part about this is you're no longer taking that user that's in California and putting them on the East Coast and sending them out. You're just sending them to the closest point of presence. I have 150 of these beautiful little clouds here distributed globally. That's going to always make sure that I have a point of presence that's close to them, and more important, close to their application. To dial in this last little piece on the attack surface, let's say that you guys decide, hey, you know what? We want to take application 1. We want to move it up into the private cloud. All right, app 1 over here. And my guidance when we sit down and talk is going to be like, for your private cloud, your inbound access is going to be in any deny. This thing is completely dark. You can't DDoS it. No brute force attacks, no SQL injections, no cross-site scripting, you name it. There is no entry point into this application. So again, you're thinking, how on earth do you broker that connectivity? Again, we just deploy the VM that reaches outbound to our cloud. The business policy engine says, hey, wait a second, should Brian be able to talk to this, yes or no? In which application 1, because it's available everywhere, is closest to him? Take that connection over the existing one, boom, application over here. Now, as a fast follow to this, you know, VPN stink. We're all kind of in agreement on that, right? Turning stuff on and off puts you guys at risk. With Zscaler, it's transparent in the notion that the Zscaler client connector is just going to be running kind of in the background, and all of the heavy lifting that would normally cause huge or significant battery drain, a blue screen of death, this poor performance, none of that stuff actually happens down here. This guy the sole goal in life is to say, should traffic go to Zscaler? Yes or no? That's it. There's a couple of little cool things that we do, but it's not really important for this conversation. What that really means is all the stuff that would really be kind of performance heavy that's on an endpoint is actually running in the Zscaler cloud. So now I can do all kinds of cool things at scale, right? I can do SSL inspection, TLS inspection. I can do sandboxing, right? I don't have problems. I don't have to, I can decrypt. I don't have any decryption problems. I can detonate that in the cloud, not down here, right? I can do DLP at scale, right? I don't have limitations when it comes to that kind of stuff. I can do the same thing, URL filtering, the allow list or the white list, things like that. That's exactly what I'm built to do, right? Permit or deny activity based off of who the user is. Now, the other part to this is the latency, right? I've kind of told you that the Zscaler client connector just kind of are sitting there running quietly. It's just steering traffic wherever it needs to go. Now, if you can imagine, I don't want to get too technical, but let's say that this user, his local DNS is always going to be, because he's in California, is always resolved in New York City. What happens if I try to go out to salesforce.com, right? Most likely, DNS is going to tell me, because it's being resolved over here, that even though the user's in California, it's saying go out to Salesforce on the East Coast. Now, this is where I get to flex my big bad cloud muscle and brain, right? I come through, and as that connection comes to me and says, hey, I want to talk to Salesforce on the East Coast. I'm going to look at this. I'm like, wait a second. Why on earth are you going to go to the East Coast if you're on the West Coast? I'm just going to dynamically steer that user over there. You don't have to change anything in the application. It's just the DNS optimization at the end of the day. You don't have to make any changes in the environment. This is kind of the cool stuff where I'm going to take that traffic and say, hey, let's go over here. It makes it better. And so you start to look at this. Now I'm helping reduce the idea of users trying to circumvent technology or security controls, because all they know is that they want to do something, they can do it, and it's not slow anymore. Before it was slow and I would try to turn off my VPN. Now there is no more VPN. So then we start to, look at that risk, and this kind of really boils down to that whole use case. Like, let's say this user, right, is at Starbucks. If for some reason they see a little USB drive and they plug it into the computer, and they've been, boom, infected with some type of ransomware or some type of malware. In a VPN world, that user's on the network. In the Zscaler world, this user will never, in a million years, be on the same network ever again, whether it is your legacy data center or your private cloud. I'm going to completely segment that. So if you look at that story, like, hey, I'm going to spread the east to west, what's really going to happen? In the Zscaler world, I'm not going to hit the other users that are connected. I'm going to hit my local Epson printer or my Raspberry Pi that's running in my home, right? I'm not going to affect the servers on the network and stuff like that. Oh, and by the way, since I capture all that traffic, whether it's destined for like an internal application or for the internet, right? And the internet's not always a good thing. When that piece of malware tries to call home, the command and control, by the way, guess what? It comes right here. And oh, by the way, I get IOCs or indicators of compromise that, hey, look, this particular computer is reaching out to some nefarious website, right? Or it's trying to exfiltrate some type of, code or traffic or whatever like that. I can inspect it and stop that from happening. So now I get to help minimize that risk. And the last part is users are not going to hate Zscaler. That's kind of my promise to you guys, right? We're not like a box center where you get to come in and promise the world, sell an appliance and kind of walk away, right? I'm here with you guys pre-sale. I'm here with you guys post-sale. I need to be on a quarterly basis. And when I say me, I'm saying Zscaler, but someone like myself to making sure that, hey, I have made some pretty vast promises here on how we do business, but I can get you guys there, right? I'm going to make sure that when we meet, that things are coming into play, right? Maybe you guys aren't ready to bite off on the whole shebang, right? Maybe your biggest need is like, hey, Brian, our traffic going out to the cloud is 90% encrypted. We need to have visibility, right? But later on down the road, we want to talk about data loss prevention, right? And so the way that I would structure this is like, hey, phase one, let's get traffic wherever it is at to the Zscaler cloud. Phase two, let's have a data protection workshop. Let's sit down and talk about what's important to your business, right? Does it make sense to do regex patterns, or is it data fingerprinting? Or maybe you guys have Azure information protection and you just want to be able to, ingest those tags and protect your users when they're going out and doing things, right? So in the last part of this that I'll leave you from, users don't hate it, right, is that this is the user experience. And I did mean to draw some stuff over here, because we can also talk about protecting users when they're at headquarters or the branch office. But the user experience is always going to be consistent. If Brian is working at headquarters or a branch office, going out to the internet, whatever policy he has is going to follow him. The same thing goes that whatever access he has to internal applications, wherever they are, right, he's going to have that access. So this user, we'll call him Brian, that's my name, closes the laptop at headquarters, decides to mosey on down the street, go to Starbucks. He opens up his laptop. The only thing he does is that there's the captive portal from Google that says, hey, you're going to be a good little internet citizen when you're using Starbucks Wi-Fi. They check that, and immediately the Zscaler client connector kicks in and starts forwarding traffic back over to Zscaler for sanitation and to have business policy applied to it to dictate if they can get to the application. They don't have to do anything weird. There is no turning stuff on, turning it on, and multi-factor authentication. It truly is transparent. All they know is they just have a company-issued laptop, and things just happen to work, and this is great. Not having to multi-factor or use one-time password. By the way, you could do that, and we can do it intelligently. It really depends on what your guys' business needs are. And the kind of, yes, you have a question.
Oh, sorry, I just want to say 4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. I'm going to leave you guys. So we just talked a little bit about that user experience. The next one is Gdpr Ccta, right? These are big compliance issues that you guys have. I can't boil the ocean, but what I can tell you, if you have a user that is in EMEA, right, and they decide to leave EMEA, they fly into New York, and then they end up in San Francisco, my policy is going to follow them wherever they're at. On top of it, I'll make sure that their logging history always stays in EMEA. And if they ever say, hey, wait a second, I have the right to be forgotten, then you just submit a ticket, and I'm able to obfuscate those logs so you can never be married to that user. And the last part is you look at this and say, Brian, multinational company, you said APAC, does that include China, specifically mainland China? The answer is absolutely, right? I would love to sit down with you guys. You usually need like an hour to kind of architect this out and say, hey, everything that I'm going to show you here today, I can do this in China as well, right? And that becomes very powerful, because now when you start looking at the cloud could be a little bit intimidating, trying to figure out where you're going to go. But with Zscaler, I have a path to get you there because I've done it, right, for hundreds and hundreds of customers specifically. So with that said, please come back to the booth, check us out there. And if there's no more questions, then I think we can just let it go. I might have maybe a minute left to answer anything. Is there anything left?
Nope, we are good. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Follow me on LinkedIn, call, text, email me. I'd love to chat with you guys about this, and I appreciate your time today. Enjoy the summit.